squishies, welcome back to another vlog. This is Infinity Train, episodes 1 through 5. My first vlog in my new apartment. Though it's not actually that new at this point. I've been here a bit over a month, but this is my first chance to film. You know, moving in takes time, setting stuff up takes time, setting up my area to film in took some time. It's still not completely set up. As you can see, the wall behind me is blank. I do intend to eventually put something on it, but here we are, and here is Infinity Train. I watched the original short that served as its pilot a long time ago, the one that was eventually remade in modified form as episode 3 of the series we got. It was really good. And I looked forward to seeing the actual show, and now it's out. It functions extremely well as this one-off miniseries. I know that a second season has been announced. I'll talk about that more, I think, when I talk about the second half, because I have watched the whole thing. I've now actually watched the first half twice. But I'm only covering the first half in this video because 44 minutes is enough to cover in one video. I didn't want to do... Actually, no, that's more than 44 minutes. That's 44 plus 11. That's an hour. And that's enough episodes for one video. I'll watch the second hour next month, presumably. This is a commission vlog, so depends a bit on the commissioner. Anyway, this is an excellent show. Every element of it is just really well executed. I feel like one of the biggest pitfalls American TV falls into is trying to pump out too many episodes too fast. Shows that have smaller seasons do, on average, tend to be better. There are exceptions. Steven Universe's first season is like 52 episodes long. That's a lot. But in general, when you have a smaller season and can focus more intensely on each episode, you can produce a more consistent result. Whereas with a show that has, 26-hour-long seasons, 22-hour-long seasons, 20-something hour-long seasons is standard for, network dramas. And that's too much. You cannot make 20-odd hours of good TV about the same thing in 1 year, which is more or less what that season length demands. There have been things that have come close to that, but even there, you have your ups and your downs. You have your good episodes and your bad episodes. You're still going to have that with a 10-episode miniseries like this, but it's going to be more consistent, and it's going to be more consistently higher quality because you're putting more effort into each episode. That's the reason... That's the reason, for example, She-Ra's second and third seasons were so short. That was a deliberate decision to be able to focus more on each season. Or so they tell us. I have some suspicions, but that's She-Ra. That's for another video. Here we're talking about Infinity Train, and right from the start, this show is great, and it wears some of its influences on its sleeve. This has a strong influence from 80s fantasy movies. The high-concept setting, the energy level, the kid dealing with your standard issue 80s kids problems, it's going to be either bullying or parents getting divorced or sibling rivalry. Those are your options for an 80s fantasy movie. And the kid, falls out of this world into another one. The two examples I'm most familiar with are Labyrinth and Neverending Story, but it's a pretty common format for kids' fantasy movies of the period. And they know it. The musical score is very 80s. And in particular, I noticed early in the first episode when Tulip and her friend, whose name I don't remember, are on their way, or like on their way to Tulip's house from the bus. There's a musical sting that plays a few times in there that is very distinctly the same musical sting that's used in the Neverending Story to denote mystery early in the movie, before things when things are still focusing more on Bastion's journey than Atreyu's, before the two kind of converge late in the movie. It's and for a big chunk of the middle, Bastion is essentially passive, but when he's more active early in the movie, it's very closely associated with the book itself. And it's this very distinctive musical sting that is used repeatedly early in the episode as kind of this thing to clue us in, something's not quite right. So then we get these 5 episodes, which essentially serve as our introduction to the world and the premise. Another thing it has that's sort of 80s-ish. The 80s and early 90s, there was a lot. That's when video games got big, and there's a lot of pop culture influence from video games, both subtle and overt. And so Infinity Train borrows from your typical platformer. It borrows the levels structure. Each train car is like this distinctive challenge that has to be overcome to get to the next one. That's very much like how platformers in particular, but video games in general, were designed. To some extent still are, but it's much more common nowadays to have some kind of central hub world, to have more information about what's going on, to have a storyline running through it, whereas a lot of early video games are just, here you are at the beginning of the screen, work your way through it, the end of the screen, you get a little yay or whatever, and go on to the next one. And as video games developed across the 80s, the amount of variety between levels rapidly increased. So in like early mid-80s video games, levels were very samey. You'd get growing complexity, but they would still basically be the same environment, the same kind of challenges. And then by the end of the decade, you have stuff like Super Mario Bros. 3, where you've got these aesthetically very different worlds that are built around different themes, and some of them have like unique gameplay elements to them. Even in the middle of the decade, you're starting to get that with like the original Super Mario Brothers, and it's 5, I think, different level environment types. The regular overworld type, the dungeon type, the which you could consider that in the Bowser's Castle is the same or different, I don't know. The water levels, and the ice levels. I think that's it. There are some. Those are the ones that like the gameplay in some way differs between them. There's some that are aesthetically different, like the ones with their giant mushrooms everywhere. But I think that's it. Were the ice levels in Super Mario Bros. 1, or was that in Lost Levels? I don't remember. It's been a long time since I played the original Super Mario Brothers. But regardless, that's the way the Infinity Train is structured. Is you have these distinctive worlds with their own cast of characters and challenges, and we follow our characters as they travel across these worlds and grow and develop, and then move on to the next one that's very different. So each episode focuses on one car, although there's some in between that we see only brief glimpses of or only hear about. And each of them gives a different kind of challenge, which is very distressing for Tulip. Because Tulip wants the answer. She wants a solution. Straightforward, simple, to get her through. She is extremely goal-focused and task-oriented. She immediately approaches the train as a puzzle to be solved. And that's not an inherently bad thing, and I don't think the show depicts it as one. Tulip is depicted as being very clever. And that's a big part of how it shows her cleverness. But it's not actually the right approach to the train. Because it becomes clear at the end of the 5th episode from the cat's comments that the numbers counting down on her hand, what causes them to go down is not any one action or type of action, it's personal growth. She is developing as a person, and that's causing the numbers to go down. When she resists developing as a person, it doesn't matter what she does, the numbers stay the same. So when she is so focused on her own goal that she's not caring about the others around her, she's not caring, initially she's being very selfish in the first 2 episodes. Understandably so, she's freaked, it's a new situation, it's confusing. But she is being a little bit self-centered. Like, 1-1 is also on a journey to find his home and his mother, and Tulip doesn't really care about him initially. And she has to admit that she does, and that pursuing her own goals to the exclusion of all else instead of, giving a crap about 1-1, who is, trying to help her, and honestly saved her a couple times in the first episode, as annoying as he was being in the second. She needs to grow by accepting, his friendship, and that means something, and that there is, that she should show some loyalty in return, and not simply cast him aside, or the things he gives her aside. The next episode, she then becomes focused on just getting through each car still, though. But she's with 1-1, but still focused on getting through each car, and her number doesn't change. The next episode, we see that she is so focused on this that she's ignoring people asking her for help. She's ignoring people in need. And so she has to help Atticus to get through his car. And by letting go of her own goals and helping someone else, that's a little bit of growth. The next one is... what is the car after that? Oh, the crystal car. The train is reminding her that her single-minded focus on where she's going, she's let go of where she's coming from, which of course is where all the reasons are for why she's going where she's going. Even if you're very focused on a goal, why do you have that goal? You have that goal because of something in your memory. That's what, events in your past have shaped who you are and what you want, and so you're pursuing that. and she's lost sight of why. She just wants off the train. And the car helps remind her of that by reminding her of a happy memory with her parents. But memories can be a trap too. The 5th episode is then like, well, but if you dwell too much on your past and trying to make your past out to be, happy, if you ignore the bad parts, or if you, just spend too much time in your past, you can get stuck in it and not be able to move forward. These are, they're 11-minute episodes. They're these simple little life lessons that Tulip has to learn, but they're presented in such creative ways, getting trapped in the videotape of her memories and not realizing that she's the one altering them. That's a great one. That it really works as a driving engine for the series. Pun. Fully intended, I'll be honest. She's in... she's got to keep growing. She can't just stay focused on this one goal. And that's something that, we all occasionally need a reminder of, I think. We live in a world that demands we be very goal-oriented, that presents us with tasks to do and things to accomplish. And sometimes you get so focused on achieving something that you stop growing as a person. It becomes about doing that one thing, and you neglect other parts of yourself. The other thing is, of course, there aren't always simple answers. Life isn't a puzzle to be solved. It's something to be experienced. It's a variety of experiences to be experienced. Sometimes you just gotta experience things instead of approaching everything in life as something to be fixed or solved or changed or controlled. It's a really interesting approach for a children's show to take. It's not the typical life lesson that shows try to teach you. Children's shows try to teach you, and I appreciate that. Because I think kids especially need space in which to explore and experience an adventure in unstructured ways. And a lot of our culture denies them that. Adults need it too, and a lot of our culture denies us that even more so. Only other thing, random observation basically, that I couldn't think of where to put it in the rest of this discussion. The only other thing really plot-wise or story-wise is those weird bug creatures with the tentacles. I don't know if it's intentional or not. It's different enough that it could be a coincidence, but it's similar enough that it could be another reference to source material. There's something very Lovecraftian about them. And specifically, there's a Lovecraft story, more like a story fragment, honestly, called The Thing in the Moonlight, that is this guy trapped in a dream, and no matter where he goes, he keeps coming back to a train car that is like fully powered on and everything. It's actually more of a trolley, but a trolley is a kind of train. And before he can get it started running, he sees the conductor and the motor something. I forget what it's called. But he sees the conductor and the engineer approaching, and they're human-shaped from the neck down, but their heads are just these white cones with a red tentacle coming out the tip, and they drop to all fours to chase him. And that image of the creature on all fours with the tentacles coming out of where its head should be is what those bug creatures remind me of. That and the association with the train. The trait itself fascinates me. It is, of course, extremely mysterious. It's massive, not just in the sense of being, at least applied by the title, infinitely long, and certainly we never see the back end of it. We do eventually see the engine. It's... The individual cars are huge. They're like building sized. The wheels alone are like 2-3 stories tall. It's just a great design, and totally nonsensical on the inside. It's not even entirely clear. I mean, though it functions in a very magical way, but aesthetically it's all technological. It's, orbs and robots that are, controlling the thing and structuring the thing. It's a great, visually, it's just very compelling, and story-wise, it's really just this great mystery that is never answered of what is this train. I think it's hinted at in a few places, but I'll talk about that more in the second half. As for the other three characters, the other three recurring characters so far, because I'm not going to count the robot attendant thing, and the robed figure we see at the end of episode 5. I'm not going to discuss either because that's not really a thing until the second half, other than that brief teaser at the end of episode 5. Now, the characters, the only really recurring characters we have are Tulip, Atticus, 1-1, and the cat. And they're all really interesting in their own right. Tulip I've already discussed a bit. Atticus is just wonderful. He feels very much like Sir Didymus from Labyrinth, of being like this cute little dog that has this very fantasy nobility sensibility to him, because he is this fairy tale king that's also a corgi. It's a great combination, and he's just a really fun little character, but at least in this first half he hasn't really done that much. That's a bit understandable when you know that he was not actually intended to be a recurring character, but people liked him so much in the pilot that they wrote him into the rest of the show. Which kind of explains why, character-wise, he doesn't have a ton to do. He's just kind of along for the quest. But that's fine. He's a great supporting character. 1-1 is also a great character. In a sense, he's just these two very simple characters shoved together, but the constant switching between them is very funny. And honestly, he's a hybrid of two of the most entertaining robots in all of fiction, Gurr and Marvin, from Invader Zim and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, respectively. Visually, he even resembles the movie version of Marvin. Especially his head. Marvin's head, 1-1 is all head. But the idea of him having these two very distinct opposed sides that can break apart and come together again is great. The way in which, even his name, 1-1, he's one, but he's also two at the same time. And I particularly like that they voiced them, different people voiced the two halves. First of all, that makes it clearer which one is talking, although tone and content usually suffice for that. But for another, it just makes them more distinctive and gives the gestalt more personality. I think Glad One gets a little bit more screen time. Sad One tends not to speak as much, but that's in keeping with their personalities. He's more morose. He comes in occasionally with wry commentary. In a lot of ways, he's actually the funnier of the two. The obituary joke in episode 3 is one of the funnier jokes in the show, though it's overshadowed by Atticus's "You want to go out? You want to go out?" It's a gag that happens twice in the episode. That's probably the funniest gag in the whole show, period. But yeah, these first 5 episodes really set up something interesting. They give us our first real mystery of what is this place, what does it mean, what should Tulip be doing? And the answer is that there is no singular should. It depends on what's best for her own development at any given moment, which is a good answer to that question in general. And then in the second half, we're going to shift to some other stuff, as hinted at by the introduction of the menacing rogue figure at the end of the episode. I think that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Patreon for early access to vlogs, essays, let's plays, and more. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!